What if Goliath was never the villain, but the last hope of a race abandoned by the heavens? At first, the story seemed clear. A shepherd versus a warrior, the weak defeating the strong, good triumphing over evil. But what if that was just the polished surface of a much darker truth? Ancient records speak of the Nephilim, giants born of celestial beings and humans. They weren't monsters, they were guardians, keepers of ancient knowledge, knowledge that could set us free or bring our end. But who decided they were evil? The canonical scriptures brand them as abominations. Yet in the apocryphal texts, there are faint, nearly erased mentions of giants who protected sacred secrets, truths the archangels chose to bury. Why does the Bible fall silent when the scandal gets too big? In Ethiopian tradition, forgotten fragments describe Goliath, not as a mere Philistine warrior, but as a guardian of the gates of knowledge. And what about David, the young king chosen by God, or a tool used in a divine purge? A voice echoed from the heavens saying, "Fight for me." But whose voice was it really? Was it truly the Most High? Or something, or someone, wearing that name to shape the outcome of history? What if evil wasn't an accident, but a carefully orchestrated creation? Lucifer, before his fall, may have had access to these secrets. He may have seen the plans, the decrees of extermination. And when he tried to warn humanity, he was silenced, labeled, cast out, demonized. Not because he was evil, but because he tried to reveal what was forbidden. What if Lucifer's greatest crime was trying to tell the truth? That battle between David and Goliath wasn't a fight for justice. It was the symbolic execution of ancient wisdom, a scream smothered beneath the roar of victory, a fallen giant's body, and with it, a buried world of secrets. Did we truly win, or were we manipulated into cheering for a massacre? In the Dead Sea Scrolls, an enigmatic passage speaks of a righteous one of great stature who shall fall to open the eyes of the small. But this righteous one, could it have been Goliath all along? The truth is starting to seep through the cracks of the official narrative. And while we celebrate the hero, we ignore the cry of the fallen. But what Lucifer saw was even darker than the fall of the Nephilim, a conspiracy that began before the earth was ever formed. What do you think about all this? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Lucifer saw more than just giants falling. He witnessed a conspiracy woven before time itself, a plan sealed within the halls of Eden, long before David ever drew breath, long before Goliath raised his sword. There was a code, a pact forged among the thrones of heaven. Silence what must never be revealed. Destroy those who knew too much. At the heart of Eden there was a tree, but not the one with the forbidden fruit. Another one, hidden, the tree of pre-cosmic knowledge. It offered more than good and evil. It held forgotten memories from a universe that came before. What if Eden wasn't a garden, but a prison for forbidden knowledge? Among the guardians of that knowledge were the Nephilim, beings born from the union of angels and humans, inheriting fragments of celestial truth, truths that challenged the official story of heaven. And that made them dangerous. Lucifer, as the Lightbringer, was one of the first to hear the echoes of that truth. In the Book of Enoch, a text banned from the Bible, there are accounts of angels who taught humanity art, science, and ancient languages. They were called the Watchers, and when they began awakening humankind, they were hunted down. Why would teaching be a sin? Unless it threatened those who profit from ignorance. Lucifer didn't fall. He was cast out, not for defying God, but for daring to interrupt the massacre. The archangels knew, if humans ever learned their true origin, if they understood who the Nephilim really were, the spiritual empire would collapse. Goliath wasn't a monster. He was a direct descendant of one of the last Watchers. What if Goliath's head wasn't taken in victory, but to erase his bloodline? David, chosen by a higher force, never knew the whole truth. He was a weapon, a hero shaped by a rewritten story. And the original scrolls, burned, hidden, buried beneath centuries of doctrine. But some fragments survived, and in a forgotten chamber beneath the Syrian desert, a shattered scroll speaks of a being who tried to stop the great lie before it became law. That being was Lucifer. If the Lightbringer is the villain, Then who lit the darkness we now hide in? But the truth Lucifer tried to reveal didn't end with the Nephilim. It reached the very foundations of heaven itself. And David's name wasn't the only one marked. If this struck a chord with you, like the video and helped spread the message. David's name wasn't the only one marked. But what if David himself had been chosen? Not out of faith, but by design? Since childhood, David heard voices. They called him to the wilderness. They claimed to be the God of hosts. But which host? And which God? Even before facing Goliath, he was secretly anointed by Samuel. A strange ritual, filled with archaic symbols and forgotten words. Oil was poured, but so was blood. Why the urgency? Why choose a young shepherd out of thousands? What if David wasn't chosen for his faith, but for a hidden ancestry? In writings rejected by ancient rabbis, there are mentions of human bloodlines mixed with celestial seed. Some were deemed pure, others dangerous. David was a direct descendant of Ruth the Moabite, a people forbidden to enter the congregation of Israel. Then why was he anointed? Was the illegitimate bloodline hiding a key? Lucifer knew David's origins, not as an enemy, but as a pawn in an ancient game, a chessboard where angels and men were manipulated. In the archives of the book of Jasher, a text branded heretical, it says, "The hands of the small shall bring down what was decreed, but the spirit moving him shall not be his own." David defeated Goliath, but what many forget is that he cut off the giant's head with Goliath's own sword. What if that's a symbol? The system destroying truth, using the very tools of truth itself. After the battle, David didn't bury Goliath's head. He paraded it. But why? In Jerusalem, traces of ancient rituals reveal that giant skulls were once used as offerings to seal pacts with celestial entities. Was Goliath's death a sacrifice? Not a battle? The temple hadn't been built yet, but the old altars still cried for blood, and Lucifer watched from the outside. Cast out, but not silent, trying to stop the cycle from repeating. What if every hero history glorifies is the executioner of something we were meant to remember? And when David became king, he built more than a throne. He raised a portal, and the remaining Nephilim began to vanish without a trace. Subscribe. What comes next is even darker. David didn't just build a throne. He opened a portal, and after that, the Nephilim began to vanish one by one. During David's reign, something strange happened. Ancient records of giants, once common, suddenly stopped. It's as if they were erased from the earth, but not destroyed, relocated. In the apocryphal book of Gad the seer, an enigmatic passage describes David in a trance, standing before a structure not mentioned in the canonical scriptures. And David saw a light not of this world, and it spoke with a voice of thunder, "The time has come. Open the gates for those who remain." What gates were those? And who needed to pass through them? Near Jerusalem, archaeologists uncovered ancient inscriptions, bearing names eerily similar to the giants listed in Genesis 6. Among them, a recurring phrase appeared, "They returned to the void so the throne could remain." Did David seal a pact where human sovereignty came at the cost of exiling an entire race? And Lucifer knew. He tried to stop it. But the seal was etched with royal blood. The very sword used to kill Goliath was used again, not for battle, but for a ritual. What if Goliath's blood was the price to open an interdimensional portal? What if David's victory was actually a mass banishment of beings who knew too much? In the Qumran texts, a mysterious fragment states, "And the king made the heavens fold, and the sons of ruin were carried by the wind, sealed outside of time." The sons of ruin, the Nephilim, or the remaining watchers hiding among men? Why does history fall silent during this period of David's reign? Could the man after God's own heart have allied with a force even the prophets didn't fully understand? And the most unsettling part, that portal was never fully closed. In 1947, when the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, one scroll and damaged by time bore a symbol that matched the seal found on artifacts from David's era. The same symbol appears in ancient Luciferian rituals, but not as a mark of evil, as a warning. Lucifer didn't try to open the portal. He tried to stop it from being used again. But David's bloodline didn't end there. It stretched through the centuries, and within it, something ancient still breathes. Share this with someone who needs to see what was hidden. David's bloodline didn't end with him, and within that blood pulses something older than the throne of Israel itself. David's victory sealed more than a kingdom. It sealed a lineage, a genetic, or perhaps spiritual, inheritance marked by a secret pact. The throne of Israel was just the beginning. The true throne was in the heavens. The Gospels claim that Jesus descended from David. But which David? The warrior who fought giants, or the king who made hidden pacts with unseen forces? What if the blood of the Messiah was entwined with the same lineage that exiled the Nephilim? In certain apocryphal Gospels, like those of Thomas and Philip, there are subtle hints that Jesus came to undo something ancient, something that began with David. But why would Jesus' mission involve unraveling the very bloodline he came from? Gnostic texts point to a forgotten doctrine that salvation comes not through obedience, but through revelation, through truth hidden behind the throne. In the Nag Hammadi library, a fragment reads, And he who bears the name of the king must purify the blood with light, for the ancient fire still burns in his bones. Could this light be Christ's true mission? To break the manipulation of history. And what does Lucifer have to do with it? Everything. Because before the fall, Lucifer was the bringer of light, not of destruction. And ancient records suggest he tried to reach humanity through the royal bloodline. In some esoteric circles, there are theories that David was visited by a being of light before his battle with Goliath. And this being was not the God we know, but the first rebel. What if Lucifer wasn't David's enemy, but the silent mentor who tried to warn him of the deception? But David chose the path of power, and in doing so, sealed the royal lineage with the codes of heavenly obedience, not of divine revelation. Centuries later, Jesus would attempt to break that seal. What if the real conflict wasn't between Christ and sin, but between Christ and the throne that began with David? What if the cross marked the end of a cycle that began with a stone hurled at a giant? But the secret of the royal blood didn't die on the cross. It was carried through hidden generations, and some say that even today, it still pulses among us. Have you ever wondered about this? Share your thoughts in the comments. The royal blood didn't die on the cross. It survived. And it pulses hidden among shadows sworn to protect a forbidden secret. After the death of Jesus, the story seemed sealed. But there are overlooked fragments, apocryphal texts, hidden gospels that suggest another reality. Jesus wasn't the last of the bloodline. In Gnostic manuscripts, there is mention of a branch that escapes the blade, a hidden descendant, protected by a brotherhood sworn to never allow the heavenly throne to be restored without revelation. What if David's bloodline continued, far from the world's eyes, guarded by those who knew the truth of the blood? This brotherhood appears under many names: the hidden Nazarenes, the keepers of the thread of light, the sons of silence. But across all the records, one symbol returns: the seal of an inverted sword over the skull of a giant. Did these guardians carry not just the lineage, but David's lingering regret? They knew the true story wasn't preached from pulpits. It was hidden between the cracks of institutionalized faith. And Lucifer, even in exile, kept appearing, not to rule but to guide those who searched for truth beyond the rituals. What if the true followers of the light weren't in churches, but in deserts, caves, and among the outcasts? This lineage, this living spark of conscious rebellion, appears across many traditions, disguised. Among the Cathars, hunted by the church. Among the Essenes, isolated in the wilderness. Among the Gnostics, branded as heretics, all carrying fragments of the same legacy. David's blood, touched by forbidden light. What if the cross wasn't the final attempt, but the final warning? A secret manuscript, attributed to a grandson of John the Evangelist, states, "The blood was never erased. It was hidden until the heavens split once more, and the giants are allowed to speak." What if the Nephilim were not destroyed, but exiled, waiting for the return of the pure blood aligned with truth. And that's when the conspiracy folds into itself, like a circle. David kills Goliath. Christ tries to break the cycle. The guardians hide the blood, and Lucifer watches, but not as an enemy, as a witness, as the one who tried to warn us from the beginning. Now traces of the bloodline are emerging once more. Secret rituals, symbols etched on ancient walls, and a forgotten prophecy claims that the last guardian will awaken in our time. Like this video, if any part of this made you uncomfortable, ancient symbols have begun to reappear. And the prophecy says, the last guardian of the royal bloodline will awaken in our time. 2023. In a forgotten cave in southern Turkey, archaeologists uncovered an inscription in archaic Hebrew. Just 3 words. Ben David Nephilim awakening, the son of David, the giant, the return. Coincidence? Or the echo of a bloodline that never died, only hid itself waiting for the right moment? Beneath the underground cities of Cappadocia, stone carvings depict human-like figures, with eyes of fire and markings on their arms. The same seal of David, the inverted sword, and beneath it, the head of Goliath. What if the sacrifice of the giant didn't end the story, but triggered a spiritual countdown? Alternative researchers claim that certain mitochondrial DNA lineages carry markers that are non-human, fragments not found in Homo sapiens, nor in any known creature on Earth. Could this be the legacy of the Nephilim? Or is the hidden blood of the Watchers still flowing through us? In forgotten Kabbalistic texts, there's a prophecy encoded with numerological keys. Linked to David's genealogy, it reads, when time is fractured, and the sons of the throne forget the light, the last guardian will see the sword, and hear the name of the giant. But who is this guardian? And why would he hear the name of Goliath instead of David? This revelation changes everything, because maybe the true heir of the bloodline didn't come to protect the throne, but to challenge it, not as a king, but as the voice of those who were silenced. What if David's blood no longer serves the archangels, but those who were erased? And now the signs are intensifying. Accounts of dreams with red lights, children speaking ancient names they were never taught, DNA codes being silently unlocked through modern technology. What if the awakening has already begun, and most are still asleep? And Lucifer, he never disappeared. He watches and waits, because the same prophecy says, the light bearer will be the first to recognize the guardian, and the last to speak to him before the second portal is opened. But the second portal is not opened with blood. It opens with memory, and what is about to return will not be welcomed by the heavens without war. Subscribe. The truth doesn't end here. The second portal isn't opened with blood, but with memory, and that memory, erased for centuries, is awakening within us. There is a sound that comes before the wars in heaven. It's not thunder. It's a whisper, a forgotten name, spoken in dreams, from the mouths of children and through symbols reappearing in the shadows. Goliath, but not as a villain, as a key, as the one who carried in his very body the final inheritance of the Watchers. What if remembering Goliath is the spark that shatters the myth of David? In hidden Coptic texts buried in the deserts of Egypt, there's a prayer once condemned as heresy by the early church. Let the stone fall once more, and let the giant rise in the name of the truth that was silenced. That prayer is now resurfacing, in tattoos, in visions, and even in low-frequency sound recordings picked up by military radar systems. A coincidence? Or the universe itself trying to remember what the angels worked so hard to erase? The second portal is not physical. It is symbolic, mental, spiritual, and the secret, it lies in the human brain. In recent research on the pineal gland, scientists have discovered that specific vibrational stimuli trigger altered states of consciousness, in which some people report visions of fallen angels and giants lying in ruins. Why do these visions always follow near-death experiences or deep meditation? And that's where the conspiracy violently closes in. History, as we know it, was designed to keep the portal shut. Dogmas, guilt, manufactured moralities, all built to prevent the return of memory. Because if humanity remembers, the heavens will be forced to answer. Lucifer knew this. He saw what would happen if the world forgot. And that's why he fell. Or rather, was cast down. A preemptive punishment for trying to reactivate forbidden memories in the human race. What if the serpent in Eden didn't come to destroy, but to awaken what had been sleeping? Now, memory stirs, and with it, the second portal begins to open. Not in the sky, but within us. But not everyone wants the truth to return. The archangels are waking up, and what they are preparing isn't salvation. It's a spiritual war against awakened memory. Tag someone who would dare to watch until the end. Memory is awakening. The second portal is opening, but the archangels won't allow it. They're reacting. And what's about to unfold won't be just spiritual. They call it restoration. But behind the name is a celestial operation to suppress the awakening. A counterstrike. Subtle, but deadly. Reformed religions are rising again. Messages of submission, purity, and a return to true faith are spreading across platforms, media, and pulpits. But something's changed in the tone. Now they carry fear, disguised as hope. What if the new spiritual revival is actually a divine suppression program against the awakening of forgotten truth? Leaked documents from the Vatican speak of secret studies into spiritual regression experiences, where individuals claim to remember being Nephilim, guarding portals, and knowing Lucifer not as an enemy, but as a brother. Why are these memories dismissed as delusions when they all mention the same symbols, names, and timelines? In the Druze tradition, there's a myth about the last echo, a sound that reactivates a primal memory from before the fall. And in 2024, a similar sound was recorded simultaneously by seismic stations in Iran, Antarctica, and Mexico. What if the second portal isn't just metaphor, but a real phenomenon, echoing across dimensions? Meanwhile, the symbols of David's bloodline are reappearing, but not in Jerusalem, in the bodies of those who dream of the inverted sword. Marks, codes, dreams, all pointing toward a great reversal in the narrative. Goliath as the protector, David as the weapon, Lucifer as the whistleblower. What if every hero we've been taught to worship was rewritten to hide the Empire's true enemy? And then he appears, not in the skies, but in the collective consciousness. Lucifer, no horns, no fire, no screams, just a gaze and one question. Now that you remember, what will you do? Because the portal is no longer a concept. It's already been crossed. And in the next part, you'll find out what's coming from the other side. If this disturbed you, that was the point. Leave your comment. The portal has been crossed. Memory has returned. And now, what's coming from the other side can no longer be contained. They're not monsters. They're not gods. They're memories that walk. Truths taking form. In the caverns of the collective unconscious, the Nephilim are awakening. Not with screams, but with remembrance. Remembering who they were, why they were hunted, who ordered their extinction. What if Goliath was the first martyr of a war made of silence? The official scriptures can no longer carry the weight of the questions. Who decides what heresy is, when the very foundation of faith is starting to crack? David, the revered king. But what if he knew? What if he regretted it? There are strange passages in the Psalms, verses that speak of misunderstood monsters, of giants that worshipped, of pain the king could never confess. What if the Psalms are the laments of a man who killed what he was meant to protect? Christ came, but not to build a religion. He came to break the lie of the bloodline, to purify the throne that should have never existed. But did he fail? Or maybe it wasn't his mission to save, but to prepare. Lucifer tried. He warned, and he paid the price, not with fire, but with forgetfulness, turned into the enemy, so no one would hear what he knew. What if Lucifer's greatest sin was loving humanity too much, and trying to free us from the gods who demand blind obedience? Now humanity approaches a point of no return. Religion is crumbling, science is hesitating, the silence is breaking, and the children of forgetting, those who carry the fragments, of the bloodlines of Goliath, of Christ, of Lucifer, are awakening. They don't want thrones. They don't want temples. They want truth. What if paradise was never a place, but a state of consciousness that was stolen from us? What if the true heavenly war was always a war against our memory? David, Goliath, Lucifer, not enemies, but pieces of a distorted story, written by those who feared what would come to light. And now the light shines again, but not from the skies, from within. If this is the truth, why are we still keeping our eyes closed? And if it's real, drop your truth below.